On the night of March 4th, 2008, a young woman sat studying in her student house in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Eve Carson was 22 years old, a senior at the University of North Carolina, and she wasn't just any student. She was the student body president, a Morehead Kane scholar, and someone who seemed to embody everything good about youth and promise. She had no way of knowing that within hours, everything would change in one of the most heartbreaking crimes to ever shake a university community. That night, two men were driving through Chapel Hill with a single purpose: to find someone to rob. And when they saw Eve walking toward her car, they made a choice that would destroy not just her life, but the lives of everyone who loved her. Eve Marie Carson was born on November 19, 1985, in Athens, Georgia. From the very beginning, she was exceptional. In high school, she was student body president and class valedictorian. She volunteered at a safe house for abused and runaway teenagers. She worked as a page in the United States House of Representatives. She even assisted in stem cell research at the University of Georgia while still in high school. When she arrived at UNC Chapel Hill, she didn't slow down. She majored in both political science and biology, earned membership in Phi Beta Kappa, and received the prestigious Morehead Kane Scholarship. She studied abroad in Cuba and Ecuador. She volunteered with children, coached girls running programs, and taught science to elementary students. In April 2007, she was inaugurated as Student Body President, a role she took seriously, fighting for predictable tuition increases and better opportunities for all students. She had already accepted a job at McKinsey & Company as a management consultant after graduation. Her future was bright, limitless even. But on that March night, Lawrence Leavitt Jr. called his friend Jason McNeil and asked him to drive him and his friend Rio to Chapel Hill. Rio was actually Demario Atwater. Leavitt told McNeil he wanted to rob someone. McNeil declined, so Leavitt took his mother's car instead. He and Atwater drove to Chapel Hill and began searching for a victim. They saw Eve going toward her car. Leavitt got into the driver's seat. Atwater got into the back seat. They forced Eve into the back where Atwater held a gun to her head. Can you imagine the terror? One moment you're walking to your car, probably thinking about your studies or your responsibilities as student body president, and the next moment two strangers have guns and complete control over your life. They drove Eve to several ATMs. At 3:55 in the morning, they withdrew $700 from an ATM at University Mall in Chapel Hill. They tried another ATM in Durham but couldn't get more money. During this nightmare, Eve tried to reason with them. She told them they didn't have to do what they were doing. She begged for her life. She told them they could take whatever they wanted. They didn't need to kill her. But Leavitt and Atwater had already decided her fate. They had seen their faces. They couldn't let her go. They drove her to a densely wooded neighborhood about a mile from UNC. When Eve realized they were going to kill her, she asked them to pray with her. Think about that. In her final moments facing certain death, she asked her murderers to pray. They shot her 5 times. First, Leavitt shot her with a .25 caliber handgun. He hit her in the right shoulder, right upper arm, right buttock, and right cheek. The autopsy would later show blood in her lungs, which meant she was still alive and breathing after these shots. She was still conscious, still suffering. Then came the 5th shot. Atwater stood over her with a sawed-off 12-gauge shotgun. Eve raised her right hand to shield herself. The blast went through her hand and into her right temple and brain. That was the shot that killed her. A forensic psychologist later said the manner in which Eve was shot showed a complete lack of regard for another person. They left her body there in the woods and drove away in her car. At approximately 5 in the morning on March 5th, police responded to reports of gunshots. A woman who lived in the area had heard 1 gunshot, followed by a woman's scream, and then 3 more gunshots in rapid succession. Officers found Eve's body at the intersection of Hillcrest Circle and Hillcrest Road. She was tilted on her left hip with her right arm bent behind her head. Her roommates later identified her body. The news spread quickly through campus. Chancellor James Moser spoke to the student body that afternoon. That evening, students organized a candlelight vigil. 3 student a cappella groups sang. A slideshow of photos played. Hundreds attended her funeral in Athens on March 9th. The North Carolina men's and women's basketball teams wore black badges on their jerseys that read Eve for the remainder of their seasons. Before the Carolina-Duke game on March 8th, there was a moment of silence in her honor. Meanwhile, investigators were working the case. Surveillance footage showed someone using Eve's ATM card. Over 2 days after the murder, $1,400 was withdrawn using her card. The footage was clear enough to identify faces. On March 12, 2008, police charged 21-year-old Demario James Atwater with first-degree murder. The next day, they arrested his accomplice, 17-year-old Lawrence Alvin Levet Jr. Both men had extensive criminal histories. Levet had convictions for drug possession, larceny, breaking and entering, and felony possession of a firearm. At the time of Eve's murder, he was on probation for breaking into a house. Atwater had been convicted of possession of marijuana with intent to sell, trespassing, robbery, and assault. In February 2005, he received 3 years probation for breaking into a home. In June 2006, police confiscated a handgun from him during a burglary investigation. He pleaded guilty to possessing a firearm while on probation and got more probation. Then, on February 20, 2008, just 2 weeks before Eve's murder, Atwater was arrested for carrying a gun while on probation. He was released on a $10,000 bond. His court date was set for March 3rd, but the case was assigned to the wrong courtroom. The hearing was rescheduled to March 31st. If that hearing had happened on time, if he had been in jail where he belonged, Eve Carson would still be alive. The evidence against both men was overwhelming. Jason McNeil, the friend Levet had called that night, became a confidential informant. He told police that both Atwater and Levet had shot Eve. Levet had confessed to McNeil that he shot Eve with the handgun while Atwater shot her with the shotgun. At the time of Eve's murder, he was on probation for breaking into a house. Atwater had been convicted of possession of marijuana with intent to sell, trespassing, robbery, and assault. In February 2005, he received 3 years probation for breaking into a home. In June 2006, police confiscated a hand. Levet told McNeil that Eve was still alive and moving after being shot several times with the handgun, and that Atwater then stood over her and shot her again, killing her. Cell phone records placed both men in Chapel Hill before the killing. The ATM surveillance was damning. Atwater even admitted to being the person in security video taken at a local convenience store trying to use Eve's card. In October 2008, a federal grand jury indicted Atwater on 1 count of carjacking along with 3 firearms charges. The carjacking charge carried a possible death penalty. Levet couldn't face the death penalty because he was under 18 at the time of the crime, thanks to a Supreme Court ruling in Roper v. Simmons. On April 19, 2010, Atwater pleaded guilty to federal charges of carjacking, kidnapping, and weapons possession. On September 23, 2010, Judge James Abidi sentenced him to life in prison plus 30 years. At the sentencing hearing, Atwater turned to Eve's parents and said, "I'm sorry for everything that's happened. No matter what the court did today, it would be far from anything I should receive." Eve's parents declined to speak. On May 24, 2010, Atwater also pled guilty to state charges of first-degree murder, first-degree kidnapping, armed robbery, possession of a firearm by a felon, and possession of a weapon of mass destruction. In exchange for his plea, prosecutors agreed not to pursue the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Levet's case went to trial. It began on December 6, 2011. He pleaded not guilty. He declined to testify. The prosecution presented their case, including testimony from McNeil about Levet's confession. On December 20, 2011, the jury found Levet guilty on all charges. Judge Alan Bador, the same judge who sentenced Atwater, said, "The life that Miss Carson led was too short, but I know that she continues to be an inspiration, not only for her family, but for thousands in this community and across this country." Bador sentenced Leavitt to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But in February 2013, the North Carolina Court of Appeals vacated Leavitt's life sentence and ordered a new sentencing hearing. The decision relied on Miller v. Alabama, where the Supreme Court ruled that a mandatory sentence of life in prison without parole for defendants under 18 at the time of a crime is cruel and unusual punishment. On June 3, 2013, a resentencing hearing was held. Before being sentenced, Leavitt said, "You know, people make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. I'm not the monster that y'all made me out to be." Orange County District Attorney Jim Woodall responded by calling Leavitt a predator who didn't care about the consequences of his actions or about other people. He does not care about other people. He cares about one person. He cares about Lawrence Leavitt. Woodall said Leavitt should not be allowed to ever victimize another person. After considering mitigating circumstances, Judge Bador again sentenced Leavitt to life without the possibility of parole. Leavitt appealed, arguing various legal points about his trial and sentencing. In 2014, the North Carolina Court of Appeals upheld his sentence. Prosecutors had also charged Leavitt with the January 2008 murder of 29-year-old Duke University engineering student Abhijit Mahato, but he was found not guilty in July 2014. Today, both men remain in prison. Atwater is serving his life sentence in federal prison. Leavitt is currently incarcerated at the Albemarle Correctional Institution in North Carolina. During his incarceration, he has committed 17 infractions, including threatening to harm staff, disobeying orders, involvement with gangs, using profane language, and possessing contraband. He will never be released. But what about Eve's legacy? How do you honor someone whose life was stolen so senselessly? The University of North Carolina established the Eve Carson Scholarship, officially the Eve Marie Carson Memorial Junior Year Merit Scholarship. It's awarded annually to 2 juniors and includes a $5,000 stipend for a summer experience and half cost of attendance for the student's senior year. The scholarship is entirely student-run, upholding the tagline, "Students Celebrating Students." The Moorhead Kane Scholarship also endowed a 4-year full merit scholarship in Eve's honor called the Eve Marie Carson Carolina Way Scholarship. On the 2nd anniversary of her death, UNC dedicated the Eve Marie Carson Garden near the campus YMCA. The garden contains a bluestone seat overlooking the campus's main quad and a wall of Georgia marble inscribed with Eve's words, "Learn from every single being, experience and moment." What joy it is to search for lessons and goodness and enthusiasm in others. Near the Memorial Garden is a Carolina blue butterfly-shaped bench. The Pi Beta Phi and Phi Delta Theta chapters of UNC now host the annual Eve Carson Memorial 5K for Education. The race was established in 2008 and continues to grow each year. The 2014 race had over 1,600 registrants and raised over $116,000. A distinguished lecture series that was part of Eve's Student Body President platform was renamed in her honor in the fall of 2010. Speakers have included Elizabeth Edwards, Greg Mortensen, and former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs. In May 2008, for the first time in the university's history, UNC posthumously awarded a dual major bachelor's degree to Eve's surviving family at the graduation ceremony she would have attended had she lived. She was posthumously awarded the General Alumni Association of UNC's 2009 Distinguished Young Alumni Award. The case even reached national attention in 2009 when American Idol finalist Anoop Desai, who was a friend of Eve's, talked about her death on the show and how it motivated him to audition. In the wake of Eve's murder, the North Carolina General Assembly passed the North Carolina Street Gang Suppression Act in the summer of 2008. The law imposes specific criminal procedures and additional penalties for offenders involved in criminal gang activity. But no scholarship, no garden, no law can bring Eve back. Her parents lost their daughter. Her brother lost his sister. The University of North Carolina lost a leader who genuinely cared about making things better for everyone. The world lost someone who volunteered with abused teenagers, who taught science to elementary students, who traveled to Ecuador to work on coffee farms and teach computer skills to indigenous communities in the Amazon rainforest. Someone who, when faced with her own murder, asked her killers to pray with her. That's who Eve Carson was. Not a statistic, not a victim, a person who believed in goodness and lessons and enthusiasm, a person who made the world better just by being in it. The tragedy of Eve Carson's death isn't just that she died. It's that she died because the system failed. Demario Atwater should have been in jail on March 4th, 2008. His court date was postponed because someone assigned his case to the wrong courtroom. That administrative error cost Eve her life. Both Atwater and Levette had long criminal histories. Both had been given chance after chance, probation after probation, and they used their freedom to hunt for someone to rob, someone to kill. They chose Eve because she was there, because she was vulnerable, because they could. There was no reason beyond that, no grand motive, just cruelty and selfishness, and a complete lack of regard for human life. What do you say to Eve's parents? What words could possibly matter? Your daughter did everything right. She worked hard. She helped others. She led with grace and compassion. And two men who had done everything wrong took her away from you because the system kept giving them chances they didn't deserve and didn't use. How do you make sense of that? You can't. You just have to live with it. You have to wake up every day knowing your daughter is gone and her killers are alive. You have to see scholarships and gardens and races in her name and know that she should be here to see them herself. She should be in her 40s now. She might have children. She might be working in public health or public policy or law. She might be making the world better in ways we can't even imagine. But we'll never know because two men decided her life mattered less than $700. That's the reality of violent crime. It doesn't just take a life. It takes all the lives that person would have touched, all the good they would have done, all the love they would have shared. Eve Carson would have been an incredible force in this world. She already was, and that force was extinguished in a wooded area in Chapel Hill by two men who will spend the rest of their lives in prison, as they should. There's no happy ending here, no silver lining, just loss and grief and the small comfort that Eve's memory lives on through the people she inspired and the institutions that bear her name. She asked her killers to pray with her. Even in her darkest moment, she reached for something higher, something better. That's who she was, and that's who we should all strive to be. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and be kind to each other.